Picture this for a second. You're about to dive into a plate of hot, crispy French fries, a juicy burger, or maybe a perfectly fried samosa. But wait, something's missing, right? You literally cannot have these without that one crucial thing to dip them in. Ketchup! Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going on a seriously fascinating food history journey. We're digging into the shockingly weird origins of the most common condiment in your fridge.
So, was ketchup always made of tomatoes? Well, what if I told you the answer is a hard no? Honestly, have you ever stopped to think about where this sweet, tangy, bright red sauce actually came from? The truth is kind of mind-blowing, because the original ketchup had absolutely nothing to do with tomatoes. Zero.
See, when we hear the word ketchup, we instantly think of it as this classic American or European invention, right? Mostly because giant brands like Heinz made it so famous. But actually, ketchup started in China, roughly 300 to 500 years ago. Over in southern China's Fujian province, there was this super popular sauce called Ketchup. And let me tell you, it was not red, and it definitely was not sweet. It was a savory, incredibly salty, fermented fish sauce made by mixing fish, soybeans, and spices, and just letting them ferment for a really long time. Yep, you heard that right. The world's very first ketchup was a salty fish sauce. It was so incredibly tasty, though, that the idea spread like wildfire across Southeast Asia, becoming a massive hit in places like Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines.
Part 1. Europe's Bizarre Experiments.
So how on earth did this Asian fish sauce make its way over to the West? Well, back in the 17th and 18th centuries, British and Dutch traders were sealing around Asia. They tasted this ketchup, felt totally in love with it, and brought barrels of it all the way back to Europe. But they hit a pretty massive roadblock. The fresh fish and the very specific fermentation techniques used in Asia just weren't easy to pull off back home. So the British got a little creative. They were desperate to recreate that umami flavor, so they started throwing in some truly bizarre local ingredients. We're talking mushrooms, walnuts, oysters, anchovies, and get this, even grapes.
All these wild, wacky concoctions were bottled up and sold as ketchup. But here is the craziest part of the whole story. After hundreds of years of trading and experimenting, there was still absolutely zero tomatoes in ketchup. These European versions looked and tasted nothing like the stuff we squeeze onto our fries today. They were mostly these thin, dark, super salty sauces. Honestly, they were way closer to what we think of today as Worcestershire sauce. The tomato was still totally missing from the party.
Part 2. The first tomato twist.
Which obviously begs the question, when did the tomato finally make its big entrance? To find our missing ingredient, we've got to travel across the Atlantic to America in the early 1800s. Now, believe it or not, before this time, a lot of people actually thought tomatoes were poisonous. Crazy, right? But by the 1800s, people finally realized they were perfectly safe and pretty delicious, so they started playing around with them. The very first recorded recipe for tomato ketchup was written down in 1812 by a scientist and horticulturalist named James Mees. He described it as a mixture of tomatoes, spices, and brandy. He took this centuries-old ketchup concept and completely turned it on its head.
But James Mees's recipe had one really fatal flaw. His 1812 version didn't have any sugar in it, and it lacked the high amounts of vinegar we use for preservation today. Because of this, his ketchup went bad incredibly fast. It spoiled practically overnight. So at that time, without modern preservatives, tomato ketchup was basically a luxury item. It was really only for wealthy households who could afford to have their cooks whip up tiny, fresh batches right before dinner. It was just completely incompatible with the commercial needs of mass production or sitting on a store shelf for months.
Part 3. Heinz changes everything.
Someone really needed to figure out how to make tomato ketchup last. And in 1876, a guy named Henry J. Heinz did exactly that. By launching his first commercial tomato ketchup, he literally revolutionized the food industry. He wanted to bring this delicious sauce to every single household, not just the super rich. So he came up with a secret formula that basically nailed it in 3 steps. Step 1, he cranked up the amount of vinegar, which acted as this amazing natural preservative so the sauce could actually sit on shelves. Step 2, he insisted on using only fully ripe red tomatoes, which gave it that gorgeous, vibrant color and a much richer taste. And step 3, he dialed in the absolute perfect, mouth-watering balance of sugar and spices. This formula was an absolute game changer. By the early 1900s, Heinz's perfectly preserved, sweet and tangy ketchup was a total staple in American households.
Oh, and before we move on, I have got to share this awesome little bit of science trivia with you. You know when you're struggling to get Heinz ketchup out of one of those classic glass bottles and you just have to smack the bottom of it? Well, there's actual physics going on there. Ketchup is what scientists call a non-Newtonian fluid. Basically, that's just a fancy way of saying its thickness actually changes when you apply stress or pressure to it. So when it's just sitting there, it's super thick and refuses to pour, but the second you smack that bottle, the pressure physically makes the liquid thinner and it flows right out. It's literally delicious science in action. It is just so wild to step back and look at this epic timeline. I mean, think about it. We started over 300 years ago in the coastal fishing villages of China with a salty fermented fish paste. Then it hopped on the ships of British traders and made its way to Europe, where it was suddenly being made out of mushrooms and walnuts. Fast forward to 1812, and James Meese finally tosses the tomato into the mix over in America. And then in 1876, H.J. Heinz perfects that sweet, long-lasting formula that we all know and love today. What an unbelievable global journey, right?
Part 4. A global phenomenon today.
Today, ketchup is so much more than just a condiment. It's this incredibly adaptable cultural phenomenon. What's super cool is how different countries have completely embraced it and put their own unique local spin on it. Like, if you go to India, ketchup usually has a noticeably sweeter flavor profile to perfectly balance out their savory, spicy local snacks. Or in Germany and other parts of Europe, you'll find curry ketchup everywhere, which is infused with these deep, warming spices. But even with all these brilliant regional twists, the core concept is a worldwide staple. I mean, you can find it in practically every single fast food chain on Earth.
And the economic impact of all this, it is simply staggering. We are talking billions of dollars. Every single year, billions of dollars worth of ketchup are sold around the globe. It is hands down one of the most successful commercial food products in human history. Just let that sink in for a second. A sauce that started out as a fermented fish liquid in ancient China is now sitting comfortably in the refrigerator of almost every home in the world. Absolutely mind-blowing.
So the next time you're squeezing a big dollop of that thick, sweet red sauce onto your plate, I really hope you remember the wild 300-year history it took to get there, from fish paste to walnuts to ripe red tomatoes. I want to leave you with a question to chew on. What is your absolute favorite food to pair with ketchup? Are you a traditionalist who just loves it with a huge plate of fries? Do you dip your samosas in it? Or do you have some completely unique secret pairing that you swear by? Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this Food History Explainer. If you enjoyed this journey, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and I will see you in the next one.